Do you sometimes wish it would take less time to get your home automation working reliably? Does this kind of warning ring a bell? Does this kind of page remind you of something? Does this kind of text file bring back bad memories? Because if it does, that means you've probably spent more time debugging home automations than you could have. Today, we're bridging the gap between home automation and the software ecosystem. In order to turn from a workflow where you always end up needing to edit YAML, and if something doesn't work in your home, you need to go check out the logs and hope that they are going to show something relevant to your issue, or open the traces, and if you click the right node, you get to see that you are using a block that the UI did not highlight, had no chance to work because you were referring to an entity that does not exist anymore, into a workflow where not only are we replacing our huge configuration forms with just simple one-liners that give you what you're listening to, what action you're going to take on them, but also we're replacing whatever the hell that is with a simple, sane programming language, Python. Not only that, but if there are issues, you get to see them as you're writing the app before it's trying to run. For instance, here, if I had the same switch problem that I had in my previous automation, where my switch does not exist, I can immediately see it here and replace it with one that does exist. Another error could be the color name was wrong, so I can just put correct color name, and we immediately get to see that no more problems are there. So we can go back and try our switch, and we can see that it does indeed turn on purple. And for the sake of demonstration, we're going to just go here, threads, save, and turn it back on, and now it's red. Another example of a change that one could want to make is I'd like to change which light this sensor light app is controlling. And instead, I'm going to use these decorative lights. We can immediately see what would stop working. In this case, I cannot specify color or brightness. Why is that? Let's see. I'm trying to pull turn on what happens to be decorative lights switch. Because it's only a switch, it does not support color. So I can remove those, and it will now work. If I were to instead be using an actual RGB light, then all of those parameters would be available and documented. But it's not just that it works for lights, it works for everything, because all of those types are generated from the exact same data as is used to generate the UI forms. Now to set this up, we're going to be following the install guide over at Home Assistant Python Typer. And the first thing we're going to want to do is install AppDaemon. AppDaemon is the core that's going to be running your Python apps. In order to install it, we're going to be heading over to Add-ons, Add-on Store, and search for AppDaemon. And click Install. The next thing we're going to want to do is head over to your user there, and click Display Entity IDs in Picker. This will make it easier to identify entities otherwise in the UI. Next up, we're going to be setting up the editor, which will be VS Code. So again, we just go to the add-on store, type in VS Code, and click Install. Now on our add-ons, we're going to want to make sure that AppDaemon starts on boot and that it automatically restarts if it crashes. So we're going to turn on the watchdog. And we're going to want to start the add-on right away. On VS Code, we don't need to set up the watchdog, and we don't particularly need it to start on boot. That comes down to preference. However, it's very useful to have it shown in sidebar so that it's easily accessible. Next up, we're going to be heading over to the VS Code add-on, start it. The first time you load it up, it may take some more time. So we're just going to wait until it loads up. All right, now that that's done, we're going to set up a reasonable theme through the getting started here. And use a dark theme. Now we're going to install the Python extension. So we're going to go over to the extensions tab and type in Python. We're going to pick this one, which is 6 million downloads, and click install. Because we're using the VS Code add-on of Home Assistant, we also need to install the base PyGram extension. So we're going to paste it here and install. And finally, we're going to want to install the Black Formatter extension, which is going to automatically format our code. Then we'll need to set up our Python environment. We're going to open the AppDaemon folder by going to File, Open Folder, and pasting in the AppDaemon folder. This should show up if the add-on is already started, which it should be at this point. Click OK. Then we're going to press Command P to open the command palette and paste in Python select interpreter. Don't forget this symbol. We're going to create a virtual environment and click venv and Python 3. Once this is complete, we can now prepare to install AppDaemon. We're going to press Ctrl-Shift-C to open a terminal, and we can see that it does show .venv, which means that our virtual environment is properly initialized. Let's paste that in and press Enter. Note that this command will have to be rerun after you've performed AppDaemon updates, so that you're developing against the AppDaemon version that you will actually be running. Once that completes, we're going to want to install Home Assistant Python Typer. In order to do that, we're going to copy this command and paste it here. Press Enter. Now we're going to head over to the How It Works section to have it introspect the list of entities running on your Home Assistant. So we're going to copy that, paste it here, and press Enter. Please note that this command will have to be rerun regularly, in particular when adding or removing Home Assistant entities or when updating it, so that your Python code has knowledge of the currently available entities. Next up, now that we've done this part, we're going to head over to editor configuration. We're going to just copy this set of commands and paste it here. We're also going to copy the set of commands related to Git setup, because that's going to enable us to better track our changes. It's going to ask for a name and an email. This is fully local, it's not going to send you any email. And finally, we're going to want to tell AppDaemon about where we are so that time and sunset-based triggers work properly. To do that, we're going to open the appdaemon.yaml file and update GPS coordinates and time zone of our installation. We can copy over the GPS coordinates of our installation from the Home Assistant zones declaration. By clicking Edit here, we get to see the GPS coordinates, so we can just copy them over to this file. AppDaemon would also like to know the elevation, so we have an app that we can use to calculate the altitude. We can enter here latitude and longitude of our GPS coordinates. And click Search to obtain the altitude. AppDaemon would also like to have knowledge of the time zone, so I can look up my time zone in the time zone lists. I live in Paris, so my time zone is called Europe/Paris. And that's it. We are set up. Now to make sure that everything works properly, we're going to head over to the default AppDaemon app and give it a save. It's going to automatically format, and we can see that VS Code knows about the Python items. We're not going to need this app anymore, so we can delete it. We're now going to create our first app. To do that, we're going to register it in apps.yaml. We'll copy over the declaration here. This should be the name of your app. This should be the file it's stored in. I recommend keeping them in sync. And this should be the name of the class init file. We'll come to that in a moment. We're going to copy over the example file. I'm not sure why it added this symbol here, so we're going to remove it so that it works. We can see that the name of the file matches the module declaration. And we can also see that the class in there matches the class in there. This is our example light automation. We can see right now that it would not work because it's referring to entities that do not exist. So we are going to go ahead and update the file with actual light that exists. By pressing Ctrl Space, you trigger auto-completion and you get to see what entities actually exist in your home. In my case, I'm going to try to turn on bed lights. Then we're going to fix the input sensor. In our case, we're going to use switch 2. Now, because we've removed the Hello app from AppDaemon, we may need to restart AppDaemon. So let's head over to Add-ons, AppDaemon, and hit Restart. By heading over to the log, we can see AppDaemon starting and succeeding to initialize. If we go back to our dashboard and turn on switch 2, our light will turn on. If we turn it off, after 2 seconds, it will turn off. That is because in our code, we specified that we're listening to the state of the sensor, and if it's off for 2 seconds, then we turn off the lights. Finally, we're going to save our changes using Git. In the Source Control tab, we get to see all the changes that we have made. Right now, none of them are backed up by Git. We can see here that there is an AppDaemon dashboard that we're not actually interested in. So let's go ahead and remove that. Now in our changes, we have the AppDaemon configuration, the VS Code settings, our apps declaration, the types for our Home Assistant entities, a bunch of helpers that are created at the same time as the entities are introspected, and finally, our app. Let's save that. That's it. We are fully set up. Make sure to check out the AppDaemon documentation for more details about how to use time-based APIs, such as run in a given amount of time, or run at sunset or at sunrise. Also make sure to have a look at the examples folder of the repository for templates of more complex automations that would otherwise be very tedious to write in the native automations. Now you can automate your home using the full power of Python. Now, if we make more changes to our app, Git will enable us to track them. For instance, if I were to change the switch that I'm using, I would have this notice here telling me, you have changed this line. In addition, I can review my changes and see that this file has changed. Let's say I'm happy with this change. I'm going to save it by writing a commit message and pressing commit. In the graph view, I can see all the changes that have been made since the beginning of time.